That is the question today. I have Dana, the CEO of Hemlane, with me here to do a thought experiment. So we make content every few weeks together, and I really appreciate you coming, Dana, because you are the CEO of Hemlane. Did you found Hemlane?
hmm
Okay,
Yep.
so you're the founder and CEO of Hemlane, a property management software that I use that makes my life a lot easier so I can travel as a landlord that self-manages my now 18 rental units and plan on spending the entire winter in Thailand. So I appreciate your work on Hemlane, but I like that you come on the channel to share. Like you have over 4,000 owners on your platform. There's over, at the last count, like 25 or 24,000 rental units on there. So it's a mountain of data that I wouldn't have access to if I didn't know you. So I appreciate you coming here. A couple of weeks ago, we were recording a video, and I mentioned that I like to focus on retiring early. I think it's possible. I think people can retire early. They don't have to work until they die. They don't have to work until they're sold. They can enjoy it. And you said something I've said most of my life. Do you remember what you said?
I said I would never retire early.
Right. I actually, and I would say, I used to say, I don't think I'm going to retire early. I'm probably not even going to retire late because I loved my job, right? I was in a position kind of like you. I was demoted all the way down to the president of the company. I didn't create the company, but I grew the company, right? When I started there was 6 staff, one location. I grew it to 5 locations with 60 staff. Revenue went from about 60,000 a year to about 9 million a year. So there's a big
Wow.
change in the type of business. And I would say I'm probably not even going to retire late. I loved working there. The owners of the company were great. I loved working with them. The coworkers were great. But there's 3 things I want to talk about today. And I'm going to try to do it as brief as possible because I know that people don't want to click on a 2-hour live stream, and we're going to try to keep this to less than 30 minutes. I want to talk about these 3 things to see if these are things that you've thought about. So the first one is called the math of time.
Okay.
Okay. And I've used the math of time to get my tenants to never pay rent late once in a decade. So the math of time can apply to several different things, but here's how I apply it to retirement. So you're the CEO of Hemlane. Share only the data that you're willing to or you want to, right? But about how many employees?
We have 67, and then a ton of contractors too.
So a ton of contractors. So it's a lot of
Oh,
plates
more than
to be
the
spinning,
60. Yeah.
right?
67
And
plus.
you work at least Monday through Friday.
7 days of the week. Yeah.
7 days, because I've had Hemlane issues with tenants on the weekend, and it gets the same response as it does on a Tuesday as a Saturday. So there's somebody working there.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what a day looked like for me the year before I retired. And so,
Okay.
as president of the company, I had control of my schedule. I could choose what I wanted to do, which meant I was usually doing most things. Right? We fall into that trap of if you want it done right, do it yourself with somebody at least 20 times, and then let them take it over. Right? I would work 10 hours a day. How many hours a day do you think you're working?
Well, I truly believe that everyone thinks they work more than they do. That's something like hands down. I believe that
Do you work
everyone
from
thinks
home or
they.
the office?
I'm office, so I'm in the office
Office.
now. But
So how
for
long are you in the
me,
office, even if you're not working?
so I usually get in by 8 in the office. And I do work, but I think people exaggerate their
Oh,
hours
no,
to
there was a
some
lot of it
extent.
was
So
talking and making sure everybody was happy and right.
totally. So 8 to 6, then I'm home from 6 until 8 for dinner time with the kids. And then usually at 8:30 to 11:30, I'm back online.
Okay. So you worked a bit more than I did. At least your time consumed by work was more than mine.
Mhm.
I'd be in the
Okay.
office like 8 to 5, and then I'd usually be dealing with night instructors 9 to 10 at night, right? But I'd be
Okay.
kind of done by then. They usually didn't mess with me at midnight unless there was a problem. Um, so on average, most people who only work that 8 to 5 have like 5 hours a day. That's theirs.
Mhm.
This is the math of time. They have 5 hours a day where they're exhausted. This is why most people get home and it's Netflix, Hulu, maybe online gaming like World of Warcraft or something, or Call of Duty, and you're staring at a screen. And so that time when you're home from, you said like 6 to 8:30 with the kids, you're prepping dinner, you're
Mhm.
asking how their day was, right? You get that time. You've been at work and peopling more than 10 hours, and then you work some before you go to sleep. Now you do sleep, right? Most
Yeah.
people get 7 or 8 hours a night. Sounds like you're getting somewhere around
Yeah.
there?
It's between 7 to 8. Yeah.
So right now, while you're working, you have less than 5 hours a day that are yours to live your life.
Yes.
Now you
Yeah.
can say my work is my life. I totally get that. But how much of the planet are you seeing? How many months can you spend in another country learning cultures? How many places? A lot of people in Europe say, I travel a lot because I go to 5 different countries. Well, how many states have you been into? Because about 7 European countries would fit inside Texas. So there's places to go here that you can't do, even if you can remote work,
Yeah.
you're back online at night to handle those. Because if you don't handle emails today, they become a fire tomorrow.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So now let's look at the year since I retired. Now I loved my job. I reached financial freedom in 8 years, worked for 4 more because I loved my job like you did. And I would say I'm not going to retire late, let alone early. Time freedom, the math of time. I retired in 2022. So from 2022, July to July, I had 15 hours a day
Okay.
that are mine with this caveat. I was never exhausted, except for that week in Vegas for the Zuber event. That wiped me out. We had the midnight Denny's meetings that would go till 3 in the morning. We had 8 or 10 hour presentations. I got to meet some awesome people. I was wiped out that week. So imagine if you had 15 hours not to do nothing, right? That's the thing. People think retire so they can relax and do nothing, sit on a beach. No, it's so you can do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Here's the second thing. And now this is the one. How many kids do you have?
2.
Two. Okay, so I have 3 and you have 2. The second reason why you might consider retiring early is the number 19. Have you ever heard of the number 19 explained before?
No, but is it when they leave your house that the year they leave their house, their age?
So it's the amount of time you're going to get with your kids. So you're going to get from when they were born to 18.
Yep.
So and this is their formative years. There are years where you start to see them as a little people and they talk and they walk and they make decisions and they make mistakes. And then they're a teenager where you're the devil. Okay. Hopefully you're ready for that. And then at 18, if you're like most parents, like me, it was happy 18th birthday. Here's a restraining order. And so the kids move out. Now let's aggregate all of the time remaining in your life. So they turn 18 and move out. You're going to have game night, family barbecue, maybe a vacation once in a while where you take a trip with your kids or with one of your kids. And so for the rest of your life, they get about a year.
Yeah.
So the total aggregate time is at 0 to 18, where a lot of that is really challenging. And then you get that 1 year where you interact with them as an adult. Now, some of us are super lucky. Now, I worked at the CDL school and I got to hire my kids for different positions. You might hire your kids, get to spend some more time with them, but a year, 19. If you retire early and you don't have those less than 5 hours a day that are yours, you can line your schedule up to what their days off are. Because your kids are going to have schedules. They're going to have school, spouses, kids, work, right? All of those things that they need to do. How do they fit in their mom time or their dad time? And so one of my kids, my son, he has a job where he's off Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I coordinate to work Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I'm free for a lot of the time. So if he's available, I make time to go see him. To make that 1 year, if I can make it 20 instead of 19, I've doubled the amount of time as an adult I get to interact with my kids. Okay. Now let's flip that. Are your parents still around?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you're lucky. Mine, I had my parents till I was about 45. That 19 goes that direction too,
Yeah.
right? I moved out at 15. As soon as I got a permit, I was out. But most of us have those 18 years with them, and then the rest of our life we get a year. I would be lucky because I was in the military, moved 3 states away. I travel a lot, so I don't know that I actually got a full year with my parents. Wouldn't it be nice that as your parents have more free time, you have free time to make that 19 for you more?
Yeah. I definitely would love to. I do think about that, how often I see my parents, but now you're giving me a lot of ideas, which may be a very contrarian view, but you're giving me some ideas to talk about.
It's weird. And my friends, Michael Zuber and the lumberjack landlord and Millennial Mike, they often call me the contrarian because I come at everything from a different angle. So the last thing I'll wrap up with before we get to, would you at least even consider it and think about it, is the 3 phases of retirement that people talk about. And so I'm not sure
Okay.
the age of your parents, but you'll hit these ages eventually. I know that when we're in our 30s, we feel like it's going to go on forever, but eventually, the majority of people retire around 65 to 70, right? Depending on their social security, their retirement accounts, their normal plan, the average person.
Hmm.
They have about 6 years of what is called go-go years. So from 65 to 71, still kind of healthy, maybe not jogging, but they can go on walks. They can walk up and down a ramp on a boat so they can take cruises. They can sit on a plane for several hours so they can travel. So those are your go-go years. So your parents might be in that or about to leave that into the next 6 years after 71, which are the go slow years. They can
Okay.
still travel. They might have an RV. They go visit family instead of go see new countries. And then after those 6 years, you get the no-go years, where in our 80s, most of us are starting to look at a retirement home, and which is where I want to go. If anyone's paying attention, this is my will and testament because I don't want my kids taking care of me. I saw how that went with pets. I want a paid professional. But we have those no-go years, the go slow years, and the go-go years. Two things happen if you retire early. First, I retired at 52. So instead of starting my go-go years at 65 and getting 6 years, I started at 52 and tripled the number of go-go years I'm going to.
Years.
So I
Yeah.
tripled the amount of time. Instead of 5 hours, I'm getting 15. And then I tripled the number of years. So there's an nth degree in here somewhere of the amount of life in my years instead of years left in my life.
Yep.
The second thing that happens if you retire early is there is a point where your parents are going to hit the no-go. If you can retire before they hit the go slow, or even you can do it when they're in the go years, the things you can do with your parents when both of your schedules are freed up is amazing. And something I missed out on because I was working past 45 when I lost both of them. So I would hope that your time freedom, the a relationship and time you can have with your kids and your parents, and the quality of that time would make you at least sit back, take a deep breath, and go, I love my job. And here's the last thing I'll wrap up with, and then I'll ask for your thoughts.
Okay.
When you're 70, because you're going to be there someday, do you want to look at your 40s and 50s? Maybe your 40s, but do you want to look at your 50s like you also did your 40s, where you grew a company, where you focused on the 70, 80 years you're going to get on this rock that's here for billions of years, this little tiny sliver that you're going to get, you focused on revenue, spreadsheets, KPIs, employees, agencies, legislation? Or did you experience life with your family and see how amazing you can make it?
I love it. Okay, now I'm going to give a contrarian view or how
Yeah.
I kind of see it. First of all, I do think it takes potentially losing a parent like that to change a mindset. Right. For example, my mom, I think she might not want me saying this on live TV. I think you could look it up on Wikipedia though. She's, I think 74, 75, something like that. And she is constantly traveling. She was, I think, in Paris last week, Rome the week before, but it was all for work. So slightly different, but it was all for work, and traveling quite a bit. And I think it would take like losing someone like that to be like, hey, I should have slowed her down and slowed myself down. So I do think that is one thing where that may change a mindset. However, I'm always the type of person who thinks you can have it all. And let me give you some examples of that. So, one, talking about these years, I think I'm almost 40. Talking about these years, I think, is really important. The go, I like it. The go slow go years. And I think you said the no go years, the three. And I think for me, there was actually, I'm going to give an example of a book, and then I'm going to talk about kind of how I see potential retirement. There's a book called How Not to Age. It's the same. His name's Michael Greger. He also wrote a book called How Not to Diet. He's written a couple of books. But anyway, what he said is people are living for longer now, right, than they used to 10, 20 years ago. But what is happening is they're living unhealthy for longer. And so when I think about this retirement and what to do and how to plan and how to have more of those go years, I actually think it starts now with your work and with what you mentioned, energy. because if you can eat right every single day, and the book goes on, he's an MD, so he's a doctor who obviously isn't paid by, pharmaceutical companies or anything like that. So it's his own viewpoint of how he sees people living for longer and happier. And if you can eat right and exercise right, I do believe you will have those go-go years. And so when you think about retiring early, I almost wonder if there is some way to put more structure into someone like my life. I do try to work out, 3 to 4 days of the week. I do try to eat very healthy. But put more of those years so that you can have more go-go years and not go slow years. So that is like the first thing I would say of anyone listening to this. That would be my first question, is how do I extend my go-go years? Okay. Then the second is, I love traveling, and I've traveled way too much. I traveled a lot back when I was in my 20s. And I worked at Skype in London, so I would do weekend trips everywhere to go see every single country. I go to Africa every summer for 5 weeks, but I work from there. But I do go to Africa every summer. And one of my things is I like to travel with a purpose. And so a question I'm going to ask you before I tell you my thoughts is, for you, Dion, when you travel, do you need to travel with a purpose? Or when you go there, like, how do you get yourself up and excited in the morning? And the reason I ask that is, like, when I'm traveling, it's like to see family there, to see a friend who lives there who can like actually give me that cultural experience. Um, and I think if I had like 15 hours a day to do that, that 5 hours to extend it to 15, my friends might get sick of me and kick me out of their house in Thailand and say, go get a job. You've overstayed your welcome. So how do you kind of think about and balance that? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that question.
So there's two things there. Have you ever had somebody come and visit you where you live?
Yes.
Stay the weekend, stay a week, whatever. Did they experience everything in your area? Or do you have a top
Um,
like 3 or 5 things that they could see?
yeah, I give them a couple of things to
I'll
see,
give them
but
a couple
not
of things
everything.
because
I
they're
try
there.
to I try to give them the top list of like, here's the things you should see.
So you have this limited you have a time schedule. So here's what happened when I just before I retired, my brother and I started taking 1 month trips. Month in Colombia, a month in Thailand. And this is how
Okay.
they went. 2 months in Portugal, 2 months in Florida. Like I went to places for a lot of scuba is really what I was traveling for. But
Cool.
so if you have limited funds, traveling sucks no matter what, whether it's for work or for yourself. If you get
Yes.
to just go see. But if you go and you're like, okay, I've got about, I don't know, $480,000 sitting in the bank. I think I'll spend a couple thousand goofing off this weekend. You don't look at the price, you just go do what you feel like, right? So that's the first thing. If we can eliminate money as the barrier, retirement is a lot better. Life is a lot better if you have options, right? So when I would travel, that first week would be, and this is why I knew this is how I knew what my retirement would look like. And it's what it's been now for 2 years. The first week we would get to Colombia and we'd say, okay, I've heard of Cartagena. I've heard of these um, uh, salt caverns. I've heard of these hot springs that don't smell like sulfur. Like I had these things to do, right? Well, that was the first week. Now we know we got at least 3 weeks left here. So what we would do is we'd go online or we would talk to the locals and we would think of one thing for tomorrow. So today, while we're recording this, it's Wednesday. Hello, Futureland. But that one thing, then the rest of tomorrow is, when do I feel like waking up? Do I feel like watching a show? Do I feel like going out and interacting with people? Do I look for something random to do? But as long as I do my one thing, whether it's go to this farmer's market, go to this museum, go for this scuba dive in this area I've never been, or whatever, I've got this one thing every day. The
Mm-hmm.
one thing can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 5 hours, right? Of something I want to do that day. So that's what the day is planned around. Here's where those go-go years get extended. You know how much stress there is from your job that you don't know exists until you walk away from it?
Okay.
That's
Yep.
taking away your health and
Yeah.
you don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually is probably, of all the points, probably the biggest one I would say, because of health, because it's like, how do you extend those go-go years? That may be something actually, Dion. Now even though I have a very contrarian
You're
viewpoint here, that is something I would agree on, is because your health is so important, and extending those go-go years, because people are still living for longer but just not healthier for longer, they're in hospice for longer, right, and that type of thing. That, how do you extend those years is something where the health of those years and that energy, that would probably be it, is that you can't tell. I try to make the work unstressful. I try to say, and very similar to what you said of having KPIs, checking things, having cross checks and balances, mitigating fires and risks, having, there's some people who work 5 days a week and they're working weekends versus 5 days a week and not working weekends at Hemlane. And part of the reason for that is then Monday is never a fire drill for anyone. Everything's been cleared by Monday, right? And so there's certain things that we've set up from that perspective, but there's probably some underlying stress of anything in running any business. Like any business owner and operator would tell you this, that you're right, those go-go years would be very important. Now, I have a question for you on that. Okay. One thing you got me thinking about was family. And so family is so important to me. It's everything, right? That and work, the two things. And I have a very good work life. I have a very good family life. For me, one of my questions is, could you merge them together? And here's the thought. I have a friend who, him and his dad started a company together and they work together all the time. So he gets to see his dad a heck of a lot more than I get to see my mom. So could you take some of that passion of operating businesses and put it into something else? And what I'm thinking is, like, you know, my parents have a ranch, maybe starting a horse retirement facility for horses and helping run and operate that and being able to do what you love and also apply it to business and strategy, and how do we make this better, and how do we make this a better experience for people who may be dropping off their horses at the horse retirement facility, or like whatever it is. I mean, that's like an extreme example, but something like that. What are your thoughts there, and how do you think about that with your kids?
So family is very important to me too. And having worked with my family, I know that it's not possible.
Okay.
Okay, for
Okay.
everyone. There are some people who love their family, but once you start spending a significant amount of time together at work, because it's the definition of retire, I think, that's tripping you up.
Yep.
Retire means you're not doing anything. So you're thinking, if I start a business and work with my family, in order
That's
for that
retire.
to be successful and to have the lowest amount of stress, I would want to make money not matter. So if you reach financial freedom through streams of income that isn't selling your life 1 hour at a time, or it's a stream of income from the business you're starting, the level of stress in that business would be so low that you then could work with family at an enjoyable level. Because if you start a business, you have started a business, there's a little stress
Mm-hmm.
involved with it. Imagine if you started it with a family member and had to approve every decision through them when money mattered, deadlines mattered, success was not guaranteed, right? Now you take that out and you think, okay, I have retired financially and don't need the money. Now you can have what's called a passion project.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have to be compensated to be there, it is not your passion project, no matter how much you
Yeah.
love the work. But if the
Yeah.
money doesn't matter and you have retired financially early, now you can start things with your family. And if it works out, great. And if it gets to be stressful, money is not the thing that's going to cause a falling out with your family, because that's generally why relationships fail.
Yeah. How do you think about that with rental properties? And the reason I bring it up is, if you have enough rental properties, let's just say, I mean, you're at 18, you have 10 rental properties. You have that with a family member. Maybe you like doing interior design or renovations on things and use the burst strategy. But you say, hey, for every new property we buy, it's a passion project. I make money off of it. But then if I'm unhappy with it, like it's not making me happy, I will then go ahead and sell it, right? And just get rid of it. And you have that basically set up. Would you consider that retiring, or would you consider that having a job still?
So you're retired if you don't need the money and you can walk away. Right.
Okay.
So my brother reached out. He's got a rental. And my friend, Frank Contreras, from Old Guy REI, a YouTube channel, he's down in California. He heard I was tiling a shower for the first time at my place. He flew
Okay.
up to Washington and he hung out for like almost a week and he helped me tile a shower. So then he left. My
That's
brother reaches out and says, hey, you have a new skill. You know how to tile showers. So I was able to take almost a week, just go hang
yeah.
out with my brothers. I don't need to make a penny. If he
Yep.
offered me, he bought me meals while I was there, but if he offered me money, I would have been absolutely insulted. This is retired. I was able to work for a week on my brother's project to tile this bathroom, a skill I still don't have, but it came out luckily good,
I'm
and
sure
not
you
worry about
have
the money.
this skill is probably better than when you had started. I'm
But
sure you
it
learned
is.
a lot
It
in the
came out. It came
process.
out good, right? And so I appreciate Frank coming up here and teaching me that. But Had I had to work for money and my brother reached out and said, "Hey, I have to tile this shower," he would have had to pay me to not be at my job to be there to help him, right? So yes, so it's retired whether you get paid for that or not. Now, if he called and said, "Hey, let's buy a rental together, we're going to rehab it together, and we're going to split the proceeds," I'd still be retired
Yeah.
because I don't need the money. He doesn't
Yeah.
need the money. So if
Yeah.
you have streams of income from rental properties and then you look at it branching out, that's what retire, because I don't want to repeat it too many times. We don't retire to nothing.
Hmm.
We retire to anything, and anything by definition could be things that make money. Look at Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. He retires at 40, 46 and a half years old, basically. Goes into work at 8 a.m. on a day, and by 8:45 he's on his way home saying, "I'm never going to work again. I've retired. I'm done." He
Yep.
starts a YouTube channel. He writes a book. He makes a course. He goes and does presentations. He is making a lot of money off of sharing how he did it, and he can walk away from it. He's still retired in my book because he's not controlled by he has to go make money. And that's the whole point is life becomes a lot better once you have options. And when the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you, and we're probably going to be wrapping this up here in a minute, is when you said, "I'm probably never going to retire early," I think your brain turns off to the possibilities of earning money through a source that doesn't come from you selling your life, so that you
Hmm.
open up the world to then, "Hey, I really like horses, and so does my mom. What if we did this thing and the money didn't matter, but I can
Yep.
enjoy this time with her?" You would have never had the thought if it was, "I need to make this job, this company that I've created, my everything."
Yep. Now, one question for you. I'll use two people as an example. One is a good friend of ours. He's got like about, I think, probably 450 million. And he's over 70. But that's like how much he owns. So he's not a billionaire, but he's close to there. Another would be someone like Warren Buffett, right? Who I deeply admire. And in both of those cases, they continue to be involved in businesses and to some extent still have stress. Like this person I'm talking about, who is a close family friend, still has businesses and still the stress of those businesses, but doesn't give it up, but actually doesn't need any of the money. Would you consider someone at that extreme to be retired?
So there's two types of people when I look at investing. Okay.
Okay.
There is an entrepreneur and
Hmm.
there's an investor.
Hmm.
Those people that you described are entrepreneurs. I am not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You might have entrepreneurial spirit because everything you're looking through is the lens of, well,
Yeah.
what if I started this? It would be fun
Yeah.
with my family. It'd be something I enjoy, but it would also make money. I look at, I put my money to work so I don't have to.
Hmm.
And now that I don't have to work, it can be volunteering my time. It
Yeah.
can be earning money doing something. It can be traveling. It could be learning a new skill. It could be anything, right? So because I'm not an entrepreneur, my schedule is more open.
Hmm.
So that comes down to as you reach financial freedom and you have multiple streams of income, why does Warren Buffett keep working? Why does the other guy keep working? They love the game.
Yes.
Now, the stress comes when you start dealing with those big numbers and you're like, "Oh, he's got this many millions of dollars." But right, but is he making a play with 120 million or 180 million? And if it goes sideways, it doesn't only impact him, it impacts everybody who works for him, people who still have to
Yeah.
worry about where the food's coming from next week. So that stress comes with it. And there are people, and here's the thing though. So do you know how many people there are that have more money than Warren Buffett? There are corporations that have trillions of dollars, like that just have way more money than those than people that we know of, the few, the Elon Musks, the Warren
Yeah.
Buffett, right? And most of them don't have that same lifestyle. They're not out there trying to be the face of their company. They're trying to put the
Hmm.
money to work so that they can do anything they want. And everyone has to have some type of exit strategy. And the exit strategy could be, and this is from another YouTuber, Joe Kuhn, he talks about retire to something, not from something.
Yeah.
Right. So if you left Hemlane and you just said, "Okay, I'm going to be like Dion, I'm going to go scuba diving, I'm going to travel," you would go crazy.
Hmm.
But if you said, "Okay, you're you and you know you need this much in your schedule to keep you, engaged," what
Yep.
would you build to leave what you're doing?
Yeah.
And it could be that passion project with a family member.
Yeah. I love it. So I think just in summary, retirement, I think is very misunderstood, right? And so I think when you think about retirement and summarizing it, it's one, having more years back, retiring early, having more years back that are your go-go years. It is not needing the money, and it's actually investment. Like I actually define it as what you said, where you're an investor and the money's working for you and you can walk away and it doesn't impact anyone else's life, the business that you've started where there's, they have to provide food on the table for their families and stuff like that. You have none of those stresses. And then it goes to finding that passion project that if it were to fail or you walked away tomorrow, it wouldn't matter, it wouldn't impact other people's lives to have that stress. So I think actually stress is a really important factor in it, in what you're saying, and getting that happiness back and that community back and your family. Did I get that right?
Yes, and the last thing, I wanted to say this to the very end, and this is going to be where I end the video, and I wanted to say this as the closing thought because I didn't want to bring down the video early on. No one is promised tomorrow. So when we talk about exercising and eating right to make those go-go years last longer, the number one contributing factor that you can make to make the go-go years last as long as possible is to start them as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we're off of YouTube.
I love that. Cool. I love that one.